overcoming guilt and regret. So, are you a person that feels burdened at times by guilt and regret? It's a common situation for survivors of complex trauma. Uh, in the situation of Lynn, which is a true story, her younger brother Stephen died of a heroin overdose when she was, or at the age of 24. And so, after years of addiction, having lost her brother to that addiction is it was very difficult for Lynn. So for decades, she carried intense guilt and shame, feeling like she was responsible for not doing enough to help her brother. She felt haunted by what's called survival guilt or survivor's guilt, which is feeling like it's your fault or it's not fair that you survived and the other person didn't. And the emotional burden that she had to carry within her household after losing her brother. Only after her mother passed did Lynn confront the long held guilt as she returned back to the place where Stephen had died, and she performed like a personal vigil. And in that moment, she acknowledged that her brother's choices and addictions were not her burden to carry. Notice how she needed to heal by going back and letting herself truly grieve, but to be able to release the guilt instead of continuing to hold herself as guilty. In reality, she wasn't to blame for Stephen's addiction. So letting go of the shame allowed her to give herself permission to move forward. When we grieve openly, rather than suppressing the emotions, it can be a turning point. For her, it was a turning point where she was able to have emotional relief and attain to acceptance over what happened. So notice that she had long-term guilt and it was a burden to her. She was reflecting on intense years-long emotional struggle. She had she had to do a self-confrontation. She did her personal vigil where he had died, and that helped her to be able to release herself from the guilt. She needed self-forgiveness, recognizing she wasn't responsible for Stephen's choices. And she needed grief integration, which means accepting the loss and working through it as a part of healing. So, we're going to be talking today about how you can get healing when guilt and regret can kind of get in the way. In fact, some of us are not just feeling guilt, but we fear feeling guilt. And the fear of the guilt is what keeps us from being able to heal and move forward. A common example of this is when a person has a toxic family member, like their mother, and then they need to detach from their mother. So their trauma specialist says, hey, you need to detach because that person is toxic for you in your life. And then they say, well, I would feel so guilty to detach from my mom. You see, they've kind of jammed themselves up. It's sort of like going out and a getting some oil. Actually, I actually saw there was a video where a man wanted to show off that he was taking care of his car, and he thought that that would be attractive to women. So he had his car hood open, and then he took off his shirt so he could kind of flex his muscles, you know. And he's like, he's talking to the camera. He's like, this is great for the ladies, you know, just for them to see you here with your shirt off, the hood up. This is a very masculine frame here, and it's going to attract the ladies, you know. And then he was checking things under the hood, and he's like, really, I don't know what I'm doing under here, but I look like I know what I'm doing, and that's what matters, he says to the camera. And then this is this is a true story. I'm not making this up. He says, let me check my oil actually while I'm under here. And he opens up his oil and he says, it's a little bit low. So he goes to the trunk and he brings out the fluids and he opens it up. He starts pouring the fluids into the oil, But the problem is that what he poured into the engine block, where the oil goes, was antifreeze. Now, if you do know anything about cars, you know that that's the end of his life. not the not that he's gonna die, but that was the end of the car's life. Like he's done. He's done. That's the end of the video. That's the end of that car. He's done, right? Now, I use this as an illustration because what this guy was doing, he thought he was doing something beneficial. He checked the oil, said, "Oh, this needs more oil. Let me put some oil in it." But what he actually did by pouring antifreeze in the engine block is destroyed his car. He cannot drive that 1 inch. That has to be serviced now by a professional. It's a very serious situation. But he was so well intentioned. And that's what happens by someone who's afraid of their own guilt and as a result doesn't do something that would be good for their healing, like detach from their toxic mom. Oh, I can't detach from my toxic mom. That would make me feel guilty. You're misapplying your guilt. And as a result, you're destroying the engine block of your life. You are like someone putting antifreeze in the oil compartment. Someone in the comments said it's not funny. This video was actually very comical. And I'm telling you, as someone who I had a leak one time in a Jeep that I bought. I don't recommend Jeeps, by the way. Um, I had just gotten this Jeep. It was a used car, but I had a hose broke, and so antifreeze leaked into the engine block, destroyed the car immediately. So I understand the pain. So please understand, it's not out of a lack of empathy that I'm laughing. It's because the way that the guy was, he was so like semi-arrogant in his attitude. Like, yeah, I'm gonna attract these women, and I'm gonna act like I know what I'm doing. And then it was comical because in the end, he really knew not what he was doing at all. And I think he's okay though. Don't worry. I think he's a big creator and he's gonna be able to handle it. But we don't want to be in that situation, not with a car, but with our life, because it certainly would not be funny to hold yourself up with your guilt and as a result, not be able to move forward. You're misapplying the guilt. Your guilt is not to be used to hold you back from healing. Oh, I would feel too guilty to cut off the people that I need to cut off. The guilt is there for a reason. We're going to talk about that reason. Do you know the purpose of your guilt? A lot of times we haven't spent enough time meditating as trauma survivors. And as a result, we feel confounded by issues like guilt and regret. They stop us dead in our tracks and they keep us stuck. But you don't need to feel stuck by guilt or regret because of what the purpose of guilt is. Guilt is your internal punishment system. It's your internal punishment system. It's sort of like a way of policing yourself and putting yourself through a trial and then giving yourself jail time. That's what guilt is. It's saying, oh, you know what? What I did was wrong, and therefore I deserve to not feel good as a result of what I've done. It's quite a useful mechanism. We police ourselves with our guilt and regret as well to make sure that we're not going off and becoming a really terrible person. In fact, if you feel guilt, if anyone here can say that they have dealt with guilt before, or they felt guilty, congratulations. It means you are not a psychopath. Bad people don't feel guilt. Evil people do whatever with very little guilt or remorse over their actions. They hurt others, they harm others, they cause destruction, and they don't feel bad about it. Only good people feel guilt. So, congratulations. You're a good person. That's what your guilt really shows about you. That's what your regret really reveals. On a subconscious level, that's why you wallow in guilt and regret in part, is because you are expressing from your soul that you are a good person, although you've done something that wasn't good in your eyes. You are expressing from the inner depths of your being that what you did doesn't line up with who you want to be. Guilt can be a positively motivating factor, but we don't want to get tripped up and use it wrong because antifreeze is also very positive and good for a car. But if we put it in the wrong place, then it's actually destructive to the vehicle. So if you're utilizing guilt to hold yourself back and to stay stuck in the trauma, in the toxic relationships, to not move forward, to not become successful, then you're utilizing the guilt wrong. When the guilt instead is utilized to properly help you to compartmentalize your mistakes, to learn from them and to move forward, then your guilt is in the right place. To express indeed your goodness and to keep aligned with who you truly want to be, then your guilt is being used in the right place. So, how do we do this properly? Well, the proper use of guilt and regret is momentarily. The proper use of guilt and regret is momentary. To carry guilt and regret over the long term is an improper use. We can't rely on that for the long term. Guilt and regret needs to be used momentarily so that we examine the past, extract the lesson, as a result, become better, and make a change. A motivating factor for change. Oh, I don't want to feel this way again. I'm going to do something different this time. But when you wallow in the guilt, instead of letting it go, and you're not using it momentarily, but instead you allow it to sit with you. You carry it around on your back like a backpack. It becomes too much. And then we look for an escape rather than dealing with it, confronting it, learning a lesson from it, and then dismissing ourselves with mercy, allowing ourselves to move forward. We can become burdened and torn down. And it leads to a cycle of self abuse. Like imagine the man that feels guilty for hitting his wife. And then he goes to the bar because he's got to deal with his guilt. And he overdrinks because he can't handle the guilt. But when he overdrinks, he becomes mean. And then he goes home and gets in a fight with his wife, becomes violent again. And then he feels guilty. So he goes to the bar to cope. Do you see where this is going to lead to a cycle? Gets drunk, comes back, is violent, feels guilty. He's stuck in a loop because he's not handling the guilt properly. What's the proper way to handle the guilt? We have to look at the situation, use the guilt to motivate you to examine the past temporarily, momentarily. Okay, what's the lesson I need to learn? This action is unacceptable. I don't want to have this action anymore. I don't want to be that way, and I don't want to feel this way again. Okay, so what do I need to do? I need to change what my behavior. I need to change my patterns. Okay, how will I be different this time? This time I won't drink. This time I'm going to come home directly after work. That will help me to change my patterns. Now we're learning from the guilt. Does that make sense? But when we feel so burdened, how can we really just do away with the guilt? It's not like we can just snap our fingers. It's not like we can just take a pen or a pencil and pull out a piece of paper and just do a little jot exercise on a piece of paper and then we're going to feel better. Is it? Is that possible? Actually, yes. Yes. You can actually relieve your guilt by just doing a simple exercise with a pen and paper. Would you like for me to share how? Well, try to think of something right now that you've carried guilt over or you have regret about. but it's something in the past that maybe could be let go, that you could maybe pardon yourself, forgive yourself some mercy from. So, first thing is make sure you've learned a lesson from it. So, you ask yourself, how am I going to change? Once you've got an idea of what you're going to do differently moving forward, there's no more use for the guilt and regret. Regret is useless long term. We thought we needed that because that was going to teach us a lesson and we were going to be so much better. But no, it's useless long term. It's not beneficial. It's not going to help you. It's not making you better. It's only good for that momentary contemplation. So take your pen or pencil or magic marker or Sharpie, something that you can write with, piece of chalk or crayon, and take out a piece of paper. We'll do this together as a group. And you make something called a justifications list. Go ahead and write that down. You don't have to spell it right because nobody can read your paper. Justifications list. Write that right at the top. And then we're just going to number 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I recommend 5 for guilt, 3 for regret. But all of that's arbitrary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to write down 3 to 5 reasons why we're justified in the action we took, or why it would be okay to forgive the action that we took. 3 to 5 reasons why we're justified in the action we took, or why it would be okay to forgive ourselves for the action that we took. After you complete this exercise, your guilt will vanish or greatly diminish to the point where it's not burdening you so much anymore. You just feel a small amount, which is healthy, right? So let's do this together. What are some reasons why you were justified in doing what you did, or why it would be okay to forgive yourself? Go ahead and write them down in the chat. Share them with us. And you might give some good ideas that other people are like, yeah, that's a good one. I want to use that. One reason I can start you guys off with is you didn't know all that you know now. A lot of times that was the case, right? I didn't know what I know now. I only knew what I knew at the time. I was acting based on what I knew, right? Which is limited. Another one here, I'm justified because I needed to protect myself. That's right. Especially when we're talking about cutting off relationships with people that are toxic, even though they're our close family members or they hold some big title like mom or dad. Justified because I needed to protect myself. Very good. What's another one? If you're inside Zoom, you can write an example inside the chat. Because they know I stopped talking to stop the stress. Yeah. I needed to do what was healthy for me. And since those people were stressful, I needed to stop talking to them. Very good. That's a part of taking care of yourself. I needed to do it so I can set a good example for my son. Very good, Shayla. Yeah. I need to set a good example for my son. That's why I had to do it. What's another reason why what you did was justified, or it would be okay to forgive yourself and alleviate yourself from the guilt? I wasn't thinking straight due to the state of grief. Yes, let's have some empathy for that person that we were at that moment. Let's have some empathy. We were going through a lot. We were grieving at the time. My body needed time to heal without the stress. Very good. I couldn't be present because I was in survival mode. Very good. Let's have some empathy for who we were at the time, for what we knew, for the coping mechanisms that we used. I'm justified because I knew that she wasn't going to change. Correct. I needed to regain my self-respect. Very good. I did the best I could with the tools I had. Yes. Doubly yes. How about we were doing the best we could at the time? Isn't that a reason? Write it down. Whatever reasons you got, write them down. Hey, I was doing the best I could with the tools that I had, with what I knew at the time. I didn't really know what love felt like. Got to forgive yourself. A lot of times we blame ourselves for choices because it didn't turn out well. But how would we have known how they were going to turn out? We had to take a risk and we took one and it didn't work out. So we got to forgive ourselves. I didn't know. I didn't know he was evil. I didn't know because her actions proved that she was lying to me. Yeah. We recognize the pattern of incongruence. We have to separate from a person because I didn't think it would cause harm. Absolutely. We wouldn't have done it if we knew. We wouldn't have done that if we knew it caused harm. We have to forgive ourselves. I forgive myself because my actions came from a place of trauma. Yes. Very good, guys. Excellent. And hopefully you got some ideas from what other people said. That's a good one. I thought that was what I wanted at the time. Yeah, that's what I thought I wanted. Right? So we only knew what we knew at the time. We only had the tools that we had at the time. We only understood what we understood, right? We were limited in our perception and our understanding and our knowledge. Obviously, if we could have seen the future, we would have made a different decision. But nobody gave us that option, right? Am I right? Write it down. If we could have seen the future, we would have made it, but we didn't know. That wasn't an option available. We couldn't know the future. We didn't know that it was going to cause harm. Now, notice the alleviation of guilt. After you finish writing the justifications list, you feel more centered and less burdened by the guilt, by the regret, by the shame over the situation. What we need to spend more time in is a sense of healthy pride in ourselves. In other words, hey, I'm proud of you. Like the way someone gives you a pat on the back, a mom or dad gives you add a girl, add a boy. Good job. That's what we need more of. It's not making us a better person to stay wallowing in the regret. It's not helpful. Now that we're older and we're wiser, we can be grateful, even for the lessons that we learned as a result of the mistakes that we made. Sure, we're not happy that happened the way that it did, but we can be grateful for the lessons that we learned. I'm glad that I have the knowledge now. I'm glad that I know better now. And now we can restore trust to ourselves instead of, well, I can't trust myself because I made a mistake. Well, who's going to come and take over your life now that you decided that you're no longer worthy of flying your own plane? No, no, no. Get back in that pilot's chair, Captain. Get back in that driver's seat. You're still in charge, and you are going to trust yourself. So remind yourself of this. I'm a better pilot now, more qualified than ever to make decisions for myself now that I've made a mistake. I'll repeat that. I'm more qualified now that I've made a mistake. Give yourself the trust back. Give yourself the forgiveness. I'm more qualified now. You are, right? Because now you actually know. You didn't know before. And so it's mistaken, it's stinking thinking when we say, oh, I made mistakes, so I can't trust me. No, 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 no. I made mistakes, so that's the guy I want to hire. He's seasoned for the job. That's the woman I want to put in the position to drive the car of my life. She knows things that the younger me didn't know. Why would I trust the younger me? And then when the younger me makes a mistake, then don't trust the older, wiser me? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. I trust the older, wiser me. Most of all, because that's what's beneficial. That's the only thing that we can move forward with is trust in ourselves. Because if we don't trust ourselves, then there's not someone coming to take over for us. We need trust in ourselves to move forward. So self-compassion, that's good. That's acceptable all the time. Healthy pride in ourselves, that's good. That's acceptable all the time, right? Staying grounded, taking the time to pause and to think and to meditate before we make decisions in the future, that will lead to less regret. But if you do have something that you feel guilt over, that you're feeling shame over, or regret over, remember that's your internal system of goodness expressing itself. It's saying, this is not worthy of who I am. This is not aligned with who I want to be. Thank yourself for that. Thank the guilt. Go ahead. Thank you. Thank the internal system of conscious that you have. Thank you. I'm glad that I'm a good person. I'm glad that I'm not a psychopath. I don't want to be sociopathic, psychopathic, where I go through life and I don't have any guardrails, no guilt, no regret, no remorse. I don't want that. But I also don't need to be burdened, hemmed in, boxed in, and weighed down by this guilt for the rest of my life. I need to forgive myself so that I can continue to grow, be free, and be of service to those that I love. So I need to release myself from this burden. Other people's actions are not my fault. I only knew what I knew at the time. I'm all I had was the tools I was working with. Make your justifications list. 3 to 5 reasons. As soon as you do that, your guilt is diminished and you can move forward. Does that make sense? We can do the same thing when we're fearing the guilt of a future decision. I don't want to leave my abusive husband because even though he's cheated on me 5 times, I would feel guilty. Do your justifications list. I don't want to disconnect from my toxic mom, even though she makes me sick to my stomach and has put me in the hospital twice. Do your justifications list. Don't let the fear of guilt hem you up the way antifreeze would lock up an engine block. But instead, let's keep everything in its proper place. There's a place for regret and guilt. It's momentary. Examine the past, learn from it, move forward, and do this exercise on a piece of paper. It takes less than 5 minutes to alleviate the guilt and the burden that you've been carrying for so long. If you like help or assistance in being able to work through your issues, you can do a one-on-one session with me. But I definitely recommend Healing School. Course there called Attachment Styles Clinic, but it's just getting released right now on the Inside Healing School for those that are members. If you're not a member yet, feel free to sign up, and that'll be available for you